Hey everyone, this is Fabio and welcome back, and finally back with a new video. I haven't done one since a long time due to the fact that I'm insanely busy in this period for various reasons. One of those, the fact that we're doing major works in our apartment, and that of course it's a big problem, hence the different background. Instead of my usual shelves, which are now empty, this is the only position I can make a video currently. Also, I hope everything is okay since I'm trying still to get used to this Windows 10 stuff since my laptop was updated. Well, I didn't know, but it's fine. Don't mind it. But finally making a new video, and I'm very excited about it since today we're going to talk about the latest game that I finished, which is Golden Sun Dark Dawn on the DS. I hope you can see it clearly, so there's all reflections here. Finally finished the whole Golden Sun series. I've been marathoning this for months now, starting with the original one on the Game Boy Advance, moved to Lost Age, and now ended with Dark Dawn. A fantastic, I have to say, journey throughout this very, I want to say, unique and interesting franchise created by Camelot and developed for the Nintendo portable systems, and always been a part of me as an RPG player that I always regret and never play the Golden Sun games. It's something that I always had in the back of my mind. Say, you never played Golden Sun. What kind of RPG fan are you? Without going at that extreme, but still, it's something that I always wanted to play since, as I said in my previous videos, I owned the first Golden Sun for years and never played it. And I have to thank for this Steven, the Like a Gamer, and Senkai from Axenon Gamer, as listening to an old episode of Another Gaming Podcast gave me the input to say, that's it, I have to play Golden Sun. So I started the first one, loved it, and bought the others. And now, the rest of history, since, as I said, for months I've been playing nothing but Golden Sun. And finally conclude the series with the amazing Dark Dawn. It is interesting the fact that Dark Dawn overall has not been well received generally, as the other two Golden Suns. Because for what I understand, there are certain aspects of this game that didn't please entirely like reviewers and critics and people like that. But we're going to talk about that later. Personally, I absolutely love this game. I mean, it is nice. After the first one and Lost Age, it was nice to see an updated, like an upgraded version of Golden Sun, since of course the DS has more power than the Game Boy Advance. It was interesting to see the characters' sprites in this more of a 3D environment rather than it was in the previous two games. Even though, if I have to be honest, I prefer the way the games were made in for the Game Boy Advance, but that's just a personal thing. The game on the DS looked gorgeous, of course, but it, to me, kind of lost that charm in a way that the sprite on the Game Boy Advance had, but without penalizing Dark Dawn, because of course for a DS game it looked very well. I loved it, but that's just a technical thing that I wanted to highlight immediately, since naturally, having played all the games in such short time period, I was really also still thinking of the other two games in the back of my mind while playing Dark Dawn. But I say that if you own a DS, this is a no-brainer. If you like RPGs, you have to have Dark Dawn, because even if you haven't played the other two Golden Suns, it's not a big deal. The game easily explains everything you need to know at the beginning. There's a constant encyclopedia, as a constant sort of journal that explain you things that happen in the first two games, talk about certain characters, all the things that it's a very friendly game for newcomers into the Golden Sun series. So you can also say that this is a kind of a good entry point for people who have never played the series. But personally, I've decided to follow the correct, because it's not right or wrong, chronology. So started with the first Golden Sun, played Lost Age, and then Dark Dawn, which it's the chronology of the game. Since from a story point of view, Dark Dawn takes place 30 years after the events of Lost Age, and it deals mainly with the consequences of the ending of the previous game, which I'm not going to tell, even though it's for Dark Dawn, it's not a spoiler, since it's the first thing they say in the intro of the game, but it's going to spoil Lost Age. Of course, so it's this weird situation. I cannot really talk about this big thing that happened at the end of Lost Age. And the player controls Matthew, the son of Isaac and Jenna, two of the main protagonists of the previous Golden Sun games. And also, the plot is focused on the next generation of the so-called Warriors of Vale. That was the nickname of the group of both Isaac and Felix, basically, since Isaac especially and Felix and some others came from the village of Vale. And the main protagonists are, other than Matthew, there's Tyrell, who is Garrett's son, and Caris, who is actually Ivan's daughter. So these are the three main characters, but in the course of the journey you'll meet other characters who will join your party, that by the end, so that by when the party is complete you're going to have 8 party members. And I'll say, quite differently from the previous Golden Sun games, Dark Dawn gives much more emphasis on character development. I think these are good characters, interesting characters. And it's nice to see some, but not as many as I wanted, of the old characters from the previous games as adults. That was interesting. I would have loved to also have the possibility to use them more, and especially I would have loved to see more of the characters. I want to see all the characters from the previous Golden Sun, especially my personal favorites like Felix or Sheba, and even look at Jenna, for example. The only ones that we actually see are Isaac, Garrett, and Creighton. I don't know why they put the old man instead, for example, Felix, the protagonist of the second game, but whatever. It is interesting that they emphasize more the character development, especially with some characters. For example, Sveta, I think it's her name, a beast girl. She has an interesting development, I have to say, from most of the story, but also other characters. There is a lot of dialogue. This is also, since I mentioned before, one of the complaints that I read about this game. I don't see why it is a problem, since this is an RPG. RPGs are notoriously heavy on dialogues. I don't know who reviewed this game. I'm just saying what I read, and that's really made me scratch my head and say, really? That's a bad thing? It's an RPG. Thank God this person didn't review Trace in the Sky, since it has a massive amount of dialogues, so whatever. But it tells you a lot, I think, of how games are reviewed. So basically the story follows the descendants of the characters from the first game, and this journey starts as a very simple mission, actually, to repair a sort of contraption that they used to fly around. I don't want to tell too much because there is this element which is a big spoiler for Lost Age, and I don't want to give. Something happened, and this contraption gets damaged, basically they have to find a specific object that will allow to repair the repairs of this contraption. And in the course of this, a bigger adventure will progressively unveil, and then meeting the other characters and also the antagonists. Because it's difficult to say the bad guys or something like that, because I believe that Dark Dawn, just as the other Golden Sun games, makes this fine line between good and bad guys, because they also offer the game also offers the point of view of the villains and makes you realize if are they really the bad guys here. I mean, because it also very important in this game is also making you dealing with the consequences of what happened at the end of Lost Age. Something that you, Isaac, Felix, and their friends triggered by doing what they've done. That's not a big spoiler, let's say, and that it's restoring alchemy to the world. And basically, you see how the world has changed because of this. So, but something happened, and so now Matthew and the others have to solve this big problem, a new big problem. So I don't want to give too much away, but let's just say one thing that really frustrated me by finishing this game was the fact that Dark Dawn ends with a big cliffhanger. Something happened really at the last second that makes you scream, like really in agony, to say, is this it? There has to be more. We need a sequel, but we're getting to that later. So from a character and story, Dark Dawn is definitely a competent RPG, I think. It offers more depth, I think, than the other two Golden Suns, for that matter. Even though I think that Lost Age already offered a bit more character development than the first one. If we're looking at RPG in terms of character development, I think the first Golden Sun is a bit weaker than the other two, and Dark Dawn be the stronger one. If you move to combat and gameplay in general, this is basically the same thing. It allows you to do something a bit more, but not too much, and mainly using the shoulder buttons to activate two synergetic abilities that you use the most. For, like in my case, I put like push and grab, which are constantly used throughout the game. So that was like very useful, a very smart function to add. But in terms of gameplay and things you do in combat and non in combat, Dark Dawn is the exact same thing as the other two Golden Sun games. So it's instrumental to find synergetic abilities. Mainly you obtain them by meeting other characters, but in the course of the game you also acquire objects that give you certain abilities, like, I don't know, to create pillars of ice, to dry out water and other things like that. All the very cool stuff that made the first two Golden Sun games very unique and very enjoyable to me. Since, as I said before, the Golden Sun games, one of the strongest points of them is the gameplay. Both for combat, we'll talk about combat in a second, but also for the things you do while not in combat, the puzzle solving, the exploration, all this very, very neat stuff that Golden Sun introduced, and it's still there. And I was very happy to... I kind of knew that it was like this, but I was happy to do the same things that I did before. Well, like while exploring a dungeon, you also have to think, like, what do I need to do? Do I have to smash this rock, or do I have to move it? I have to make this plant grow so I can climb this mountain or something like that. The usual cool stuff that makes Golden Sun so special. And combat, it's basically the same. It's updated a bit, but not too much. That's the cool thing. The combat mechanism, it's basically the same as the other two games. Basically, there isn't the, as I called it before, I don't know if it's the correct term, but it kind of gave me an idea. It's not that dynamic view like before, that you're looking from a sort of perspective at the enemies. In this case, the camera rotates around basically the party, but the way combat takes place, it's very, very similar, basically the same as the first two games. So it's everything. It's very, very familiar. If you play the first two games, we'll absolutely have zero problem playing and enjoying Dark Dawn. And that is the second point that I was scratching my head while reading, not negative review, because the game was pretty well received, but not as well as especially the first game, which is interesting in my opinion, because the first one is not my favorite, but we can talk about that later. Basically, according to reviewers and critics, combat was nothing new. It was the same. And while from a certain point of view it is true, it's not particularly innovative. I think it was very nice that it maintained the elements. There you go, that were actually characteristic of the other two games. So maintain this characteristic that makes the Golden Sun combat so good. They're all there. The combat synergy, the Djinns, of course, are a big part of combat, since you can determine the class of your characters through the Djinns, and especially combining Djinns of different elements. You can do like the most obvious thing, like as I did in the first Golden Sun, for example, putting all Djinn of the same elements for a specific character, or like I did in Lost Age, kind of like mixing things up to have more different class for the characters, in order to have more, I think, interesting abilities and power-ups. And it also maintained the very cool strategic elements in terms of using the Djinns, because it is true that the more Djinns you summon, the more special attack you can do, but at the same time your character gets weaker by summoning more and more Djinns, and that is very dangerous, especially to say during the final battle, because that's one thing that you can say, that Dark Dawn is not a difficult game. I saw the game over screen only once. It's not a hard game at all, but also the other two Golden Sun. It's not a very challenging RPG, and that's not a problem. I'm not complaining, of course. But as I was saying, basically critics, as I said before, the fact that it is true from one way, but at the same time criticizing combat because it's too similar to before, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because I think we're getting into a sort of circular argument here, if you follow me. Basically, it is true that it's a good thing to make some innovation to a combat system, but it's not a necessity. When you have a combat system that works, you might do some updates here and there in order to maybe make it not exactly the same, but you don't need to change it completely, because you kind of lost what made it special. I mean, I wouldn't imagine a Golden Sun game without this battle system. It would be very weird. So, again, these are some of the main critiques that I saw, and I was like, really? Are this necessarily bad thing, if you think about it? Because Golden Sun, it's a turn-based RPG. It maintained a turn-based element, and of course, it was criticized. It has a lot of dialogues. It's an RPG. It's supposed to have dialogues. It's too simple. Yes, it's not a challenging game, since now very popular games is the Souls series. I'm not criticizing them, of course, since I haven't played them yet, never had the chance. But I don't mind a friendly RPG, which it's not necessarily like extremely easy. Like Lost Age was kind of tough, especially at one point. Lost Age was the most challenging one, I say. Dark Dawn is the easiest one, as I said. I died only once during the final. The final boss, it's brutally difficult on the other hand, and that's when I died. And the second time I faced it, it was a long and difficult battle. But for the rest, the game is not challenging. So if you're looking also for I was thinking about it. It could be also a good beginner RPG, other than like Pokemon or series like that. Dark Dawn, it could be a good idea for someone who is interested in getting into RPG, but you're not sure, like maybe this is too difficult or something like that. Dark Dawn, it's a good beginner one, because also I think that the other two are a bit more challenging, even though in general it's not a difficult franchise. Another thing that we have to mention, of course, is the music, because that's a big part of the Golden Sun games. And while I like this soundtrack, I think it's not as good as the other two. It's still a very good one. I don't want to sound too negative about this, but I was very, very impressed with the music in both Golden Sun and Lost Age. And while the soundtrack is very good, I didn't find any track that made me like, wow, this is really cool. And this happened quite often while playing the other two games. But it's still a very good soundtrack, and I keep saying this in every Golden Sun video, and because I mean it. I would love to have a best of Golden Sun music that has tracks for all three of the games, because the music overall is very good. There are certain tracks that I believe are from the first Golden Sun, but for the most part it's all original and new music, which is very cool, of course. And some were actually very good. Like there was one dungeon, the ruins of something, I don't remember, the names were quite out there, which was very ominous in a way. There's this powerful drums, then some silence, and other drums, this quite almost creepy, not really creepy, but kind of ominous music in the background. It was very, very cool, for example. And that made me think about it, since I talk about this ruin also. Something that I really like about this game is also like the world, the setting. It's very... this is a very small game compared to especially Lost Age. It's kind of the same thing as to me in terms of how big the world is and length of time in playing this game. It's very similar to the first one, while Lost Age is by far the biggest of the three. This game, it's basically very similar to the first one in terms of the size of the world, and it took me the same amount of time, like 26 hours, to beat. So also that's a good point. It's not too long. Like while it took me between 35 and 37 to beat Lost Age, in general, Golden Sun games are not extremely long. That could be a good point for certain players. But one thing that I really like about this world is the setting. It's a very Eastern-looking world. I mean, there are a lot of most of the cities and countries that you visit while exploring this world have very Asian culture looking, especially in the architecture. It was very cool, like the sort of like the more Chinese city, one that is very Vietnamese, Khmer, or even Thai in a way, which is very interesting. A more Indian one that was very, very nice. You don't see that too often. Whether it's the more Japanese one, but it's I like this more Eastern looking culture in this continent of Golden Sun. And so I was thinking, some mechanism, music. One thing I want to mention, I talked about this before, and I think now is the time to talk about like the future of the series. Now that I finished the all three games, and I was talking about it before, what now? I don't know if there are talks or projects for a new Golden Sun game. I read in forums that it is a possibility, but nothing too concrete for the moment. And that's a shame, because I think this is one of the finest RPG series that Nintendo has to offer. I mean, there are others, of course, but Golden Sun has a really, really special charm to it. And especially because of the way Dark Dawn ended, we need a fourth game, and we absolutely need a fourth game. It could be just a conclusive chapter of this saga. Because it was interesting, the idea that Dark Dawn put, that it's dealing with the consequences of what happened at the end of the second game. But there is so much more. I mean, there are a lot of, especially with one character, a lot of questions that were not answered to me. Like, I don't think it's too much of a spoiler. If it is, I'm sorry, but mainly concerning Alex, his role is not very clear to me, especially towards the end in Dark Dawn. While it's much more well defined in Lost Age, for example. But also something that I really want to see. I mean, with what happened, I think there has to be a next chapter in the Dark Dawn series. I would love to see also more returning characters from the previous game, other than, of course, other characters. Because Lost Age showed us that the Golden Sun world is massive, actually. It's very big. It is interesting because it's very similar to our world. One of the funniest things I remember from Lost Age was there's a continent called Oceania. And yeah, that's convenient. They were probably lazy with the naming. But apart from that, it's a big world. There's so much more than we can do. But especially there are so many characters. Like, I would love to see what's Felix up to. Where's Sheva? Where is Pierce? For example, he got mentioned a couple of times. But we never saw him. So there's so much more than you can done with the Golden Suns characters, with this story. It's a really, really good series. It's fantastic. Now that I played all of them, I absolutely love it. And we need more Golden Sun, Nintendo, and Camelot. I don't know if we'll ever have one, especially with the current states of Nintendo. Not it's in bad shape, but there's all this thing with the NX coming, the Wii U not doing very well, blah blah blah. We all know that. It's not interesting, but in terms of Golden Sun, what can we have? I think a good idea would be to bring it back, for example, a HD remake of the first two games, if it's necessary. But I think they should keep the style of those games, but maybe with HD sprites. Why not? Could be interesting. So that's in order to raise attention towards Golden Sun, and then finally making a fourth chapter. The ideal solution to me would be on the Wii U, actually, so on main console, to have a big, amazing looking Golden Sun game. I don't understand why Nintendo didn't put Isaac in Smash Brothers on the Wii U. It would be a perfect addition to the roster. I don't understand why they're not making amiibos out of the Golden Sun characters. Like, why don't we have like Felix and Isaac, and for example, the Jins would be perfect as amiibos. They're making like 4 million Animal Crossing things or Pokemon or everything. Why not Golden Sun? I mean, it's you might almost say that Golden Sun might be the Nintendo's Breath of Fire in a way, that they have this amazing series, but they don't exploit it. Let's say exploit it well enough, even though fans love it. So yeah, I don't understand it. Now that I finally played it, I think it's a fantastic series, an absolute must if you like RPGs. My personal favorites, I'll say it's Lost Age probably, because it completes the story started with the first one. I prefer the characters. It's a bit bigger and all really tiny stuff. But in a way, I think with the original, you have to play both the Game Boy Advance games in order to have the full look at the story. Dark Dawn, it's a good beginner's RPG, I think, and it can be a good beginner for the Golden Sun series, even though my suggestion is to play them in order, so you have a better grasp of the story. But I think that, as I said, Lost Age, to me, it's the best of the series. The other two are on the same level. They're both fantastic. I mean, I might have sounded a bit more negative regarding Dark Dawn, but I think it's a phenomenal game, an absolute must for the DS, and I'm so happy that I finally played it. And I don't know what to say other than please Nintendo, please Camelot, bring Golden Sun back. It's really a really good franchise. People and fans, we love it. We just need more. Especially with the damn cliffhanger at the end. I mean, I hate these cliffhangers. I have enough of them. Between like Trace in the Sky and Trace of Cold Steel and now Golden Sun. I really need to play something that doesn't have a cliffhanger at the end. So that's about it with Dark Dawn. I don't know what else to say, but I cannot recommend it enough. My main recommendation is towards the whole series, though. I mean, play them together, and they're not very long. They're reasonable, lengthy RPGs. They're very enjoyable. Um, Fantastic for Nintendo consoles. And Dark Dawn as well really gave me that bedtime story impression that I mentioned in my previous videos regarding Golden Sun. Again, it really felt like another volume of this story to me. It's simply like, now that Isaac and the others are adult, it's time for their children to have their great adventure, and I just love this game so much. But anyways, guys, that's it about Golden Sun, Dark Dawn. Fantastic RPG for the DS. We really need more. That's the only way to finish this video. We really need more Golden Sun games from Camelot and Nintendo. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I don't know where I'll be able to make another video since the situation is crazy here, but I'll see what I can do. Like always, thanks so much for watching. I hope to see you soon. Take care.